The Animals, House of the Rising Sun on LNC Radio 113.8. Welcome back. Have you noticed that no one talks about the cloud anymore? Am I the only one who's noticed that? It used to be a big thing. People would say, "Oh, the cloud. It's in the cloud. Look at our new cloud software." I haven't heard anyone say that for the last 5 years. The cloud kind of came and went. I don't know if it's even transitioned into popular lexicon. I mean, it was this word that seemed like it would enter the lexicon, but it just seemed like it faded. It came and it went. It didn't see, it didn't conquer, it just came and fucked off again. Thought, I mean, it's an interesting observation. I wonder why that is. Is it because it's so just mainstream now? It's so just normalized now that we just don't say the cloud. I mean, we don't say it's in the cloud. You might say it's on my Google Drive or something, or you got it stored, but no one. I guess maybe we just take it for granted that that's what people mean when they say they have photos stored or whatever, or they have a video from 5 years ago that it's in the cloud. I guess people on Apple still have iCloud, I guess. Maybe? I think. I mean, so maybe they say it's on my iCloud. I don't know. I mean, I don't think you should put anything on the cloud that's super private. I mean, what about that film? I think there was a film called Sex Tape that was all about that. And also, like, Jennifer Lawrence and Scarlett Johansson. And I mean, the internet, to be fair, the internet is kind of grateful, I guess, that those celebrities put the images onto a easily accessible database. I'm sure the celebrities weren't as pleased, but these are the things that happen. These really are the things that happen when the new technologies emerge. Now, I wonder whether the cloud as a concept, it might actually be the elite sharing false or incomplete knowledge again. So there's this idea, we talked about it a couple hours ago with the Gnostics, and how there's the one true God, and then from that one true God emanations were begotten, and you could, well, all of these different gods. There's the one supreme God, which is everything, and then there's different aspects of that, say wisdom or truth or knowledge or whatever. These are all aspects of God that kind of have, in the Gnostic theology, the Gnostic cosmogony, have, I suppose, their own status as a separate entity, but are still subsumed under the one term God. And the realm where all of these beings inhabit is called the Pleroma, which is roughly kind of it's kind of analogized to a cloud quite often in especially in the Gospel of Judas. The Gospel of Judas, the Gnostic text, we talked about it just before, talks about this cloud in the Pleroma. I mean, I suppose you could think of the cloud as the Pleroma or the cloud in the Pleroma. It doesn't really matter, but this Pleroma, I think, is kind of analogized to, well, at least I do. When I read it, it's sort of like a Platonic world of forms. Like the ideal of truth or wisdom, as we said. Sophia is wisdom, I think. These ideas or ideals are kind of take their place as any true Platonic ideal does in the world of forms, and I suppose the Pleroma could be a different word for this. But so in this analogy, the Pleroma, the world of forms, the material world that we inhabit is it's like a reflection or a shadow, which is very kind of similar to Plato's cave in a way, with like shadows on the wall being material emanations or incomplete holograms of Platonic ideals, and so that's represented with Plato, where there's these shadows on the wall, but actually it's this incomplete image. It's like a reflection. It's a hologram. It's a representation of the real thing. You don't see the fire. The guy in Plato's cave cannot see the fire, which is the real thing, but he can see this emanation from the fire, which is the shadow, right? So that's Plato's cave, and you can analogize that to the world of forms, but also to this pleroma. And so, why is it the elite? Well, the elite often put out these kind of quasi-real ideas and concepts for the culture at large to absorb. And the reason is so that they can introduce an idea which is true, but have control over what I suppose the populace regards within that idea to be true and what's false. So you can corrupt it. There's this idea of karmic debt. So if you do something that incurs some negative dharma? No, that's the wrong one. Karma. If you do something which incurs some negative karma, there's this idea that over, whether it's within this life or through the next life or in a multitude of lifetimes to come, you have this karmic debt which needs to be answered for, which will be answered by your own suffering. Right? So you have this karmic debt, and what the elite do, because they're always doing these fucked up things, is they actually kind of tell you they're doing those fucked up things. With any conspiracy, you can, I won't say any conspiracy, and definitely the elite aren't necessarily monolithic and unified in everything, I would say. But many of them believe in this idea of karmic debt, and so they warn us in a way where they know we won't believe it, but they make sure that the idea is out there so that people who are looking for truth can realize what they're doing and act accordingly, which is free and fair within this kind of karmic system. Because if you, it's not that they necessarily won't incur a karmic debt, but that it will be substantially lower because they've told you the fucked thing they're going to do to you, and you've done nothing about it. Thereby, it makes it somewhat your fault. Especially if the information is out there, you've been told to look for the information, and you kind of willingly don't, whether that's because you already have a paradigm that you don't want to upset, or even you don't want to upset, but you just think is true and therefore do not need to do any further research, which I think anyone who believes that is nearly always wrong, or at least should not believe that they don't need to do any more research. Every paradigm is fundamentally flawed in some way, because humans are fundamentally flawed as entities, and thereby any way of representing the world or understanding the world or explaining the world will always be somewhat flawed and not like 100% crystalline image of what it is we're trying to talk about. Bit of a tangent. The point is that the elite let you know what they're doing with kind of false or incomplete knowledge, so that they don't incur as much of a karmic debt, right? So digital information, going back to the cloud idea, digital information can definitely also be analogized in a very similar way to the world of forms. So this information, which is kind of conceptual, it's immaterial might be the wrong word. Obviously there is the circuits and what they're made of and the electricity flowing through, which makes it, material. It's certainly material, but it's, I suppose you could say it's non-physical. No, it's non-solid. You could at least say it's non-solid. Because a chip by itself doesn't do anything. A chip by itself is completely useless. You need to run that current through it for the information to be there. Likewise, the current itself is useless. You need that configuration of physical solid components for it to go. So the information on this computer is neither the electricity nor the chip itself. It's this kind of intangible, non-solid stuff, right? So, but it's similar to the world of forms in that it interacts with the physical reality and can be a blueprint for material things. In the same way, say, a sphere, we can find spheres in nature, in the physical world, the sun, the earth, Mars, black holes or whatever. Like, we can find spheres, but they're never going to be as perfect in its resolution as this Platonic ideal of a sphere, which is the perfect sphere. And so all spheres are kind of, they're imperfect representations or reflections of this ideal, right? In the same way as a sphere is an imperfect version of this ideal, you could say a Word document that is then printed on paper, right, is the document as itself on the computer is somewhat perfect. I'm not trying to use the word lightly. It's perfect in the sense that, not in terms of the content within, but the characters, the spacing, the format. It's all mathematical. It's all aligned perfectly. Everything is digitally stored. It's all within a template that's kind of perfect, right? But then you print it out on paper, and unlike a computer where you can keep zooming into an A, say, or a T, or a B, or whatever, you can keep zooming in, and the definition will keep, getting higher. If it's a Word document, not if it's just a, say, you know what I'm trying to say. If you zoom in, the character retains the same sort of graphical fidelity because it's a representation of a character, not the character itself on the computer, right? When you print it, you can't do the same thing because the ink used to print will always print something imperfect. No, obviously to the human eye, the A or the B or the T look exactly like the A or the B or the T on the screen, or whatever. But if you look very closely, you'll see tiny smudges of the ink, or tiny imperfections, or tiny pixelations, or the formatting might not be exactly as it looks on the computer screen. So in the same way, it's this kind of world of forms, or this conceptual, non-solid kind of informational world, which is computing, which is then, or can be then, transmitted and put upon the physical world, but always in an imperfect way. So I thought that was interesting. The cloud. Again, no one talks about it, so this is probably complete rubbish that I'm chatting right now. But I think it's interesting. I mean, the cloud is a term for digital storage, but it's in no single space. It's not on any single computer or in any single hard drive. It's bigger than that. It's digital storage, and I think the term the cloud, it could almost be a projection of this Platonic or Gnostic ideal. I don't know. I'd like to hear what everyone thinks, so get back to me. We've got a little known treasure, Whispering Jack Smith, If I Had You. Just listen to those horns. I mean, or maybe it's not a horn, I don't know. LNC Radio, 113.8 FM, Whispering Jack Smith, If I Had You. See you after the break.